We recorded our first episode of the week, and of course, talking about what you had in the Everyday Economics column this week at the Center Square. It's very tough to not bring tariff talk into the conversation. So I want to sort of pick this back up with you. Looking at where we are in the economy right now and what the Federal Reserve may do, just to kind of recap, everybody maybe missed the last episode. You're thinking that maybe we wouldn't see a cut until September. And of course, there's been pressure on from the Trump administration for the Fed to get going sooner. They would like to see some stimulus, obviously, from lower rates, more dollars moving faster through the economy, of course. And you're thinking that's not going to happen. I mean, and really quick to reset, core inflation is kind of hanging out there at 2.8%, 2 months in a row. Of course, you and I have talked about is 3% the new normal. Why don't you pick it up from there and offer some thoughts on sort of what you're seeing with the Fed, what might come next, and what may or may not be the right way to go here?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way to think about it, and by the way, the Fed chair told you, is they have to wait and see.
Yes.
Well, who are they waiting on? They're not waiting on the inflation numbers. If you look at the inflation numbers and you look at where the Fed funds rate is at, policy is restrictive. Policy is restrictive. The economy is cooling. So they're not waiting on the economic data. They're waiting on the policy. They're waiting on what policy is coming out of Washington, D.C., because they're trying to get ahead of the policy impact. That's what the Fed is doing right now. They're waiting to see what the policy impact is going to be. What policies are we talking about? We're talking about the immigration stuff, right? We're talking about which, by the way, could be inflationary. Remember when we had a bunch of labor shortages? All right. We're looking at government spending cutbacks, right? And payroll cutbacks. That's actually deflationary. So that's actually going to reduce aggregate demand. But then at the same time, we're also talking about tax cuts, right? Which stimulate the economy, right? You see how like all the moving parts are, right? And there's like push and pull, right? And so you got some inflationary stuff, right? And then you got some deflationary stuff, right? And the Fed doesn't know what to do with it right now. And so it's waiting to see what the policy it will be. And when we know what the policy will be, then we can start to think about what the forecast is going to be, right? For the economy, the hard data. And then we can make a decision. And I think that's kind of the mindset, when you think about these individual, these members of the FOMC, and how they start to think about the forecast. Well, it's hard to forecast right now if policy is being moved left and right every single day.
Mm-hmm. Well, and President Trump, I mean, I don't think that there's any question of this. I mean, he's a business practitioner. This is what he does. He likes to pull levers. He likes to negotiate tactically from the very beginning. I've put it out there that I'm confident that this is strategic on his part and that he's going to put tariffs on and take tariffs off to get to the kinds of deals that he wants to get to. A lot of the market at the beginning really felt like I mean, not that they were asking my opinion, but were disagreeing with my point of view, broadly. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not certain that I'm right, and I'm not certain that I'm wrong. I'm watching the same game that you're watching, and
there is a cost to this, right?
Of course,
right. There is a massive cost, right? We saw peak policy uncertainty in April. It slowed everything down. Absolutely everything down, right? Labor market, housing market, doesn't matter.
That was largely driven by fear and not any activity, right? That was a direct and opposite response to the threat of what was coming. That there was no actual thing had occurred other than the president said, we're gonna do this, right?
It was driven by the fact that people expect prices to go up.
Yes.
And if they expect prices to go up, they're like, hey, I'd rather buy everything today.
Yes.
Which we saw imports surging, right?
Yes.
Because I don't want to be stuck with the bill later. The bill's going to be way higher. And potentially, my boss might not like the fact that his profits are shrinking. Right? He, if he's lucky enough to pass on the cost to consumers, I'm paying the bill. And if on aggregate, we're all stuck because we don't have any money, he's stuck with the bill.
Right. And in practical terms, I mean, things.
And if he's stuck with the bill, we're getting fired.
Right. But in practical terms, things such as what I'm going to describe started happening. You had major carriers, FedExes, UPSs of the world, bring on additional people, almost like a seasonal staffing, to push things through customs and to be receiving things that were coming through customs as quickly as possible. So things were actually happening, like in the real world, that this set into motion.
Totally.
Activity, right?
Total. So we got a surge in imports, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then for that reason, GDP turned negative, right? And now the question is, okay, what's happening? What's going to happen next? We got a big decline in employment gains from the 225 average that we had last year to about 150,000. Right. And
still, the economy is still adding jobs, but it's just happening at a much slower rate. And is that just to go backwards? Is that at 225 average? Does that include the revision? Because there were significant revisions made on the 2024
with significant revisions and all. Okay. We had a downshift in employment gains. And you know what? And by the way, I've been very optimistic by basically saying, look, guys, ultimately 150,000 jobs a month is actually not that far below where we were before the pandemic on average.
That's
right. So we don't have to raise the alarm just yet.
Yeah.
We
got about a minute left. And I just want you to kind of bring it back home. What are the things that you're looking for in the broadest range of this economy, in terms of, symbols or signals?
Unemployment rate.
Okay.
If we do get, so far we haven't cut a lot of federal jobs, but if we do get what was expected, which is about 280,000 or so, the unemployment rate could potentially move up. Right. So I'm looking at the unemployment rate. I'm not too worried about inflation. I said before, tariffs will give you an initial price increase potentially. But the demand effect is going to offset the price increase. And I'm not worried about inflation whatsoever. May get a price level increase. Maybe it's, through the summer and then things going to eat.
Anything else?
It's the unemployment rate. It's the labor market. You got to pay attention to the labor market, right? And so if the labor market remains solid, we're fine. If the labor market starts to crack, that's when you ought to see the Fed stepping in to rescue the economy. I think that's what you need to focus on if you're trying to figure out what the Fed's going to do next.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts as always. And I'm hearing just, from the street, hiring continues to be steady, slowing down, but steady. So we'll keep an eye on it. And I appreciate your time as always.
Hiring is not as bad as I'm not too worried about the hiring necessarily. What I'm worried about is that if you start to see an uptick in layoffs at such low hire rates, if you start to see an uptick in layoffs, right? Because this stuff really happens fast. It's not linear. You start to see an increase and then it's out of control, right? So that's why a lot of people right now are saying the Fed probably should be getting ahead of this.
Yeah. Right? Gradually, and then all at once, as they say.